So let's see what advice I might have for you kind of redoing the life. The first thing I would say is it's great to pick things to do that allow you to win while losing. What I mean by that is you can do things that if you fail will be a complete and utter waste of time and loss. Gambling, buying lottery tickets, etc. I guess there's an adrenaline rush, but it's a complete loss. But there are other things that you can do and fail at that take you forward. You can form a relationship with someone that doesn't go the way that you initially thought. You can fail at what you had in mind. But you can learn new relationship skills in the process. You can learn about yourself in the process. You can help them learn about themselves in the process, so you can win while failing, while losing. The same is true with a piece of art, right? You can paint something out, you can look at it and say, well, this isn't very good. But you are a better painter, and you now have a point to iterate from. You can make an investment in a company and an idea that you believe in. You say, I like the vision of this company. I want more of this in the world. And so you make an investment and the stock goes down or the company goes bankrupt. But it's not a complete loss, right? Because you gave that idea energy. You gave that company energy, right? You failed pursuing something you believe in. Now contrast that with buying stock in a company you don't like the product, you wish it didn't exist, the world would be a better place, right? You can think of, food products with a lot of chemicals and addictive qualities, but you think the stock will go up, right? Well, you lost money, but you also funded an idea that you hate, that you don't believe is good for the world, right? And so you can win while losing, and you can lose while winning, right? You can make money fueling a world that you don't like and don't believe in, right? So that's winning while losing, right? You can succeed to keep a destructive relationship alive in which both of you end up more confused, right? So you can win while losing, you can lose while winning. I think overall it's better to lose while winning than it is to win while losing. And the most important part of that is self-development and self-growth. If you read a book and it isn't that good, but out of reading that book, you do something else that you think is even better, right? You become perhaps a better author, a better formulator of ideas, because you're using the friction of what you don't like to bounce towards something you like more, to develop more. So that's, I think, the best win. As long as you stay alive and are not in excruciating chronic pain, the measure of a life is, because you existed, is life further? Has it evolved in the direction of intelligent, sustainable well-being? Right? And a lot of those things are failing projects. You look at the airline industry, right? We've got freedom of movement because of the airline industry. And as a whole, the airline industry has lost money. But if you can give a planet freedom of movement, it's not, well, you could say it's a loss of money, but what is money for? Money is to advance humanity, human money, right? We're spending money to create more sustainable human well-being. Because as we move towards an operating system of empathy, the more miserable other people are, the more sadness we feel. So if you want to be a sociopath and operate with the sociopathic operating system, you can make a tremendous amount of money. You can cut all kinds of corners. You can expediently use and abuse all kinds of people, and you can win in a very narrow field. And the pain that you cause won't hurt you because the definition of a sociopath is you don't feel anything. So you can, quote, get ahead in narrow areas, right? Using the sociopathic operating system, and it doesn't matter if your win causes 10 other people to be miserable. Doesn't matter because you don't feel it, and feeling is what matters. But if you want to be a human being or use the empathic operating system, then if you get your new car or you get a good price on a house and a whole family loses shelter, right? Or right, you save a little money on fertilizer and, well, 10 years later, people get cancer. Well, if you're a human being, you're aware of other people. And if everyone around you is sad, dying, poor, depressed, addicted, there's nothing to celebrate, right? You've just kept misery alive in the human animal. What's there to celebrate is human beings becoming more alive, developing their skills, right? Learning mastery, bringing value into the world, bringing happiness, fulfilling needs. That's what's to celebrate. And so choose to lose while winning to create the person you want to be and the world you want to be, rather than win while losing when you've got the choice. I like that one. That's a good one. So I'm going to sit and see if there's anything else that I would say the biggest failure in our adult life has been sacrificing presence for compulsion. What I mean by that is, as soon as I get an idea that I think is a stepping stone towards well-being or a stepping stone away from some form of tragedy, disaster, something that is painful and we don't want to feel, there's an anxious energy. And I want to go do it immediately and get it done. But then there's always another thing, right? In a very complex world, there's always something that could go wrong, and there's always something that can be done about it. There's always something that can go wrong. And if it does go wrong, it'll be painful. Right? And I have been afraid of pain my whole life. In an anxious state, I don't want to feel that pain. I don't want to feel that pain. Now, this comes from a very deep place. Right? This anxiety entered the body sometime in infancy, in the terror of violence, in the terror of loneliness, in the terror of trauma. Right? Dissociating parents, sociopathic parents, enjoying suffering, enjoying power, feeling enraged at the burdens of having to raise a child in a parentally incompetent state, right? Nobody likes being overwhelmed with something to do that they don't know how to do. And our culture does not teach the art of parenting. Anyone can have a kid, an addict, someone with PTSD, someone in a profoundly narcissistic state. Anyone can have sex, and anyone can conceive, and anyone can give birth. But you can give birth to an animal, a frightened, traumatized reptile. Not anyone can give birth to a human being, someone that is empathic, someone who cares, someone who values themselves. That takes skill. It takes a certain amount of skill to keep the human animal alive, in shame, in fear, in anxiety, in insanity, right? That's what happens when the giants, for their own emotional needs, twist reality into a distorted shape so that they look better, so that they feel better. Right? An infant can't fight that insanity. They rewire what love means. They rewire what kindness is. They rewire what cruelty is to accommodate the narcissistic need for their parent to do what makes them feel good and twist the words into a way that makes that look great. Of course, every infant is initially in touch with their own body and screams and cries and thrashes about, right? But that can be easily dismissed by a sociopath. Just stick them in a room so you don't have to hear it, hit them, shout at them, threaten them, right? Manipulate the infant, the child, into submission. This is a very difficult wound to deal with, because anyone who grows up out of that helpless state knows that they nearly died, knows that there's a lot of cruelty and pain, knows that the worst feelings of their life lie in those memories. And they understand that no one in the culture wants to hear about that. No one wants to feel that. No one wants to apologize or acknowledge the level of cruelty. At best, there's a patronizing, grudging, well, we all go through that, so let's get back in the present. Only This is the present. With complex PTSD in the body, these terrors, they're in the body, in the present. They're determining the psychological age, emotionally, in the present. Right? You and I have been a terrified 5-year-old, emotionally, for much of our life. And terrified 5-year-olds are not welcome in a cult that likes to pretend that the abuse is all in the past, that the sociopathic behavior of grown-ups has nothing to do with the terror in infancy, right? Then we can have villains. And then the good people will gang up to kill, to lock up, to torment and humiliate the bad people. Right? We don't want to look as a cult at the systemic collusion in our childhood abuse that goes on generation after generation after generation, beginning with the right to give birth to an infant without the responsibility to become parentally literate, to become traumatically literate in a cult where it is at least 80% likely that a child will be traumatized, and that in a traumatically illiterate culture, that trauma will leave scars in mild to severe PTSD or complex PTSD that will be called normal because so many people have it in one way or another. It's a difficult thing to look at and to work with. But I want you to know that it's not done. And the truth is, because it's not done, meaning because I have not found a way through the physiological web of scars and fear, the thing that I want you to understand is that creating abundance in money and things reduces the pressure and stress and fear in the moment. Now, what that does is it creates a certain peace, a certain stillness. And in that stillness, you will hear the knocking of the traumatized, frightened, buried parts of the psyche, the buried infant, the buried child, screaming for attention and trying to come out. But if you've been raised in this cult, you don't know what to do with those screams. You hear them, they're unsettling. Where are they coming from? Right? Where are they coming from? Right? When you lock a part of yourself up out of terror, right? Because I want you to understand how the wound works. A giant who is not parentally trained, right? Who is, in our cult, a giant does something incompetent to a little one, to an infant, to a child. Because it is incompetent, there's a lack of regulation, right? Competency is attunement. You match the energy of the world and of the giant to the little one. because the little one has no choice. You can think of it in a simple term like a little body that can barely walk can walk maybe half a mile an hour, if that. Maybe they don't have the stamina, but let's just say they can walk half a mile an hour. Now, the giant can walk 2 or 3 miles an hour. They can, but it is incompetent to do so if they are walking with an infant. Because the infant cannot speed up, but the giant can slow down. Now, in a sociopathic mindset, you have the phenomena of narcissism. Why should I, when I can walk 3 and 4 miles an hour, why should I have to slow down? Why? Right? This fucking child burdening me. Why should I have to do less than I can do? Why should I have to listen to this moronic screaming, right? Why can't this little thing be an adult instantly because that's what's convenient for me? And a sociopath really can't get it because a sociopath, by definition, is self-centered. They don't get it, they can't get it. Because that's what a narcissist is sociopathic. That's what a sociopathic is narcissistic, right? You can't go outside and empathize with what it's like to be small, to be helpless, to be dependent. But you can play out your rage, right? Make the kids squirm, make them scream, terrify them, torment them, humiliate them, you dumb shit. You can't even keep up, right? You can do all that as a narcissistic expression of outrage. Oh my goodness. Why do I have to take care of this subhuman, not grown-up thing? Why? Oh. And in truth, it is a form of self-hate, a form of crime, to give an infant to a sociopath. Right? A sociopath is thinking about themselves. That's not going to work as a parent, right? That doesn't work unless you're, really just quickly just kill the child and let's go on, right? I didn't realize it was going to be so hard. Here, let's give it to somebody else and quick, we'll go on and enjoy our life. Well, you had 2 traumatized, narcissistic, terrified, incompetent parents. Not worse than average. Certain situations making it harder for you and them than average. Certain situations making it easier, but very difficult for them, very difficult for you. You've got that fear, right? See, sociopaths feel violent rage towards a child when they feel burdened with stuff they don't know what to do with, right? They don't feel remorse or, gee, I really have to go take some courses on parenting, or maybe we'll stop having 4 more children until we figure this out. Right? Right? Maybe it's not such a great idea just to be on mindless autopilot. Right? Now, this is a very difficult thing to deal with, right? Because in a materialistic culture, you were the winner, right? You're white, you're male, you're American, bravo, you're the winner, right? You had luxury, right? Upper middle class, right? So you're the winner, right? But that's not how you feel in your body. When you've got PTSD and have constant rapid anxiety about different things that are not in your control, echoing the constant rapid anxiety of an infant in which you really were not in control, it doesn't matter if you've got gourmet 5-star meals or a loaf of bread. You still feel like shit, right? Because to have anxiety and terror while you're eating a 5-star meal or a loaf of bread, it's the same shitty sensations in your body. And so I want to break the cultural myth that once you establish outer success, you're going to be happy. No, there's going to be a stilling of the outer panic. You will look around you and say, there's no reason to be panicked. But that's when you start to feel crazy. Why? Because when the present, you can think of what's going on as there's 2 layers. You have the past body memory, and then you have the current reality feedback. Now, when you're incompetent, you've got enough friction in your outer reality to draw your attention and keep you in the present. And now you're sane because you feel fear, you feel anxious about this, and there's lots of frightening and anxious things to be looking at. But when you become competent enough to calm the outer reality, meaning if you've got a landlord knocking on your door saying, where's the rent, or you'll be evicted in 3 days, that'll hold your attention, right? We've got to find the rent in the next 3 days. So you feel anxious, you feel all worked up about it, etc. But you've got a reason, so you're not crazy. Well, as you still the waters, right, as these choppy waters in the outer reality are stilled with competence, the outer reality now fades into the background. Because now what's there is the same feelings, but where are they coming from? And so this is where, in an illusionary psychological environment, I say illusion because we like to be, particularly in America, about the present and the future. We're moving on. We're moving on from the past and da-da-da-da-da, yeah, right? Well, that just creates a blind spot. So when the discomfort and the pain that's always been there is still there, and the more quiet, the more successful you make the outer reality, the more it's there, you hear it, right? You can kind of think of it as, a loud band playing a mile away. Well, as long as you make enough noise within a few feet, you don't have to listen to that music. But if you create total stillness, now your mind goes to the band that's playing loud a mile away. Now you hear the background music. Now the challenge within a psychologically illiterate culture is that there's no lesson of what to do with the background music. Move on. Live for today, right? Wonderful statements. It's just, they don't work, right? So I want to let you know that 1, that's there. 2, it's not your fault. 3, it creates a crisis of sanity because you've got two disappointments lurking for you in this territory. The first disappointment is you've been told a lie by the same cult that told you you'd get over it, it was no big deal, and blah, blah, blah. You've been told a lie that once you create enough money, enough sex, enough house, enough whatever, enough rank, you've been told a lie that you're going to be happy, that's it, right? Just make a lot of money, climb the cult rank hierarchy, and you're going to feel great. And that's not true. That's not true. It's not true for a couple of reasons. So that is a lie. The first reason it's a lie is that as you succeed, as I say, the past becomes more loud and persistent. The second reason it's not true is that the suffering that you've been feeling has to do with body trauma and not with whether or not you've got 1940 vintage wine or no wine at all, right? You can be blissfully happy with no wine at all, let alone 1940s or vintage or whatever. But you cannot be happy when you are in a battle with yourself. And making money often increases the battle with yourself because some part of you doesn't like the way the cult is organized. But if you flow with the organization of the cult, you are more successful in the cult, right? If your client is crazy and says, I want this the way it is, and you say, yes, ma'am, and you give them what they asked for, you'll get a check. If you point out, like, doesn't it seem a little odd? Have you noticed how miserable your husband is? Why not do some couples therapy with this money? Or go on a trip together and take some time off. Why not calm the adrenaline a little bit rather than remodel your house for the 5th time? I think it might make you happier. Well, you will not get a check. You may get a bad review. And you will not be thanked, right? But you did the right thing, meaning they would be happier improving their marriage rather than improving their outer environment, right? From one luxury thing to another thing, right? They are in an addicted state, but you see, they don't know how to deal with this either, right? If they stop remodeling their house endlessly, they might have to feel those feelings too, and they don't know how to deal with it either, right? So that's the first reason the lie doesn't work, is you often have to go counter to your own common sense and truth to be more successful in a dysfunctional culture than to do the right thing and actually be attacked by a dysfunctional culture that doesn't know what is the right thing. It just knows what the dogma is, and it's trying to conform. So that's one reason it's a lie. The other reason it's a lie is it was never the problem in the first place, right? There never was this point where if you just could make X amount of money and blah, 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 then all your problems would be solved. Certainly there is truth in that up to a point, right? But you reached that point very rapidly where you could survive and meet your needs. And so going 10 times more than that was never the issue. And if you go 10 times more than that, it's not the issue either, right? And so you're being told a lie, in part to cover for the cult's incompetence, right? The cult has never admitted its fallacy, its stupidity. It never has, it never will. Cults don't do that. A cult will never tell a new generation, we don't know what we're doing. We haven't known what we're doing for a long time. we're creating massive amounts of chronic and unnecessary misery, and we don't want to admit it because then we would feel like fools. So what we're going to do is indoctrinate you with the same things that our parents told us and the same things the government is telling us. And by the time you're 40 and you figure out it's all bullshit, well, you will have wasted half of your life doing that bullshit, so you'll be just as dumb as the rest of us, and you won't want to admit it either, and then you'll give that bullshit to your kids. And you'll just say things like, you'll see once you grow up, you'll see. And they will. They will see that they're fools, right? But we don't tell our children that we're fools. We don't know anything about mental and emotional health, right? We're chasing the wrong goal. We're causing problems with our left hand that we desperately try to fix with our right hand. We don't explain this to our kids. We're schizophrenic, and when our children are schizophrenic to a slightly larger degree, we label them and call that a medical problem rather than a cultural problem, right? We don't explain any of this. So that's a lie. That's a lie. And it is lonely to realize, well, it's another reason, well, let's finish the problem. The other problem is once you realize that more money and more stuff, which is easy to do in America, more money, more stuff, so easy. It's wonderful, right? If that could solve our problem, it would be, all our problems would be solved because it is easy to make more money. I mean, you can not read any of the books, not do any of the things they say, do the exact opposite of what it takes to make money, and you can certainly easily fail. But, you know, immigrants tell us over and over again, they come over with no English, no education, they have to deal with systemic racism, sometimes sexism, right? And they can be a millionaire in 20 years, right? And then, so it's not hard to do that. That we know the scripts are there, and anyone who really wants to, I mean, the obvious thing if you want to learn how to make a lot of money is read biographies of people who make a lot of money, listen to people who have a lot of money, and do at least half the things they say. And, you know, it's going to work, and a certain amount of that is great. But once you realize that it's not going to do it, it's not the real problem. There's no reason, it's not clear where to grow. And so there's a stagnation that occurred for like 10 years. You knew in your 30s more wasn't going to do it, but you didn't know what to do. Well, now I'm involved with nonprofit work. You see, and when you cure one person of blindness, and you can cure another person of blindness. When you cure one person of stupidity, you can cure another person of stupidity. So when your goal is not to make as much money as possible, but to actually influence the well-being, to reduce the unnecessary suffering in the world, there, 10x will bring you well-being, right? At least in areas. It may bring their outer world to the point where they can start dealing with their childhood wounds, right? So that's the second thing is a lot of well-being comes from making progress. But when you realize that you're pointing at the wrong goal, good step, the much bigger problem is where do I point now? Because you can't turn to your cult to learn where to point after you've hit a brick wall. Because they haven't hit the brick wall yet. So they're still running, right? And they don't want to hear that they're running in the wrong direction, but they're still running. Or maybe they keep upping it because what tends to happen is As soon as you get 100 million, well, that's nothing, right? 100 million compared to we need 500 million, right? So you can play that game where you just go into mindless amounts of wealth that becomes more and more meaningless, but just to avoid the crisis of figuring out what else do you do, right? Because a narcissist cannot figure this out, right? A narcissist cannot think about the well-being of the world. So it's a solution that isn't available to them, right? A narcissist can be very good at making money. And so they're on that meaningless trail, and they certainly can't comprehend, well, maybe do some nonprofit work. So that's a crisis, because we like dynamic movement, but it hasn't been clear what to do. And so I would say, understand that once you've got your world to a modicum of reasonable well-being, you can start a new endless treadmill of growth around being useful to humanity in some level, in some way, at some level and in some way. So that's now a way that you can restart some movement in the present, so that you're not just listening to the screams of the past while not knowing what to do about those either, right? So those are two reasons why solving the present is not going to bring happiness and peace after the initial burst of, oh, I did it, right? I'm debt-free. Oh, I did it. I have this. Oh, I did it. I have this. Okay, right? Bravo. And then what? And then what, right? So we need focus and we need goals. And after if you want to move towards empathy, you've got to, the more empathic you are in a miserable world, the more miserable you are for everyone else's problems, right? So that's the real riddle to solve, right? Being a sociopath is not very fun because you're numb, right? Being an empath in a miserable world is not very fun, because even if you don't have misery, you feel everyone else's, right? So that's the big pivot. But what I also want you to know is you didn't fail. Like, you did some of this shame and healing work in the past, in your teens, and that made a big difference. Bravo. And you've done, well, you got tired of it, right? I got tired of it. 20s, early 30s, fuck that. I mean, how many fucking therapy sessions are we going to do? Right? How much energy work, right? Let's just focus on enjoying life. Now, that's a positive thing, and I do want to say that we don't have the balances, right on the. It's so much easier to focus on one thing, particularly when you're scared. You've got narrow tunnel vision, right? Fear narrows your vision. We've been scared our whole life, so we like to find one thing to focus on. Okay, do therapy. Let's do lots and lots of therapy. It's just the challenge is in balancing, right? The challenge is losing control by having a more complex algorithm than we can keep clear of. That's always been very frightening, right? Traumatized people do not trust the world, intelligently so. But when you don't trust the world, you've got to control. And the only way that you can have any semblance of control is to make things very simple, because you can control a few simple things if you put all your energy into it. The only trouble with that is it's too simple to work, right? So you've got a really, really big problem that you're going to have to wrestle with, that your cult does not have easy answers for. This is not a popular conversation in this cult. And so it's very hard to work out things when you can't talk about them, right? So here's our innovation. Like, my innovation is to see if in talking to you, because you're interested, right? You want to know this stuff. You've been dealing with this you'd love to have a conversation like this. Well, where's the person to have the conversation with? Come back and tell me next week, says the therapist. What else? What's going on this week, right? That doesn't cut it, right? You want this conversation, right? And no one's been straight with you. And to some extent, you know, if you can avoid dealing with these types of problems and still get a workaround, you've wanted to do that, right? But it's not going to work. There's no country on earth. There's no amount of money, right? You left the best sex of our life, 3-4 times a day, ecstatic sex. It wasn't enough. Why, right? Well, it wasn't dealing with the core issues. One, pleasure in and of itself doesn't lead to massive amounts of growth, right? Pleasure can become an addiction. So you left that to try and grow, right? That you didn't know where to go, right? So definitely study PTSD and trauma early. But, you know, what to do with this pain? Because I want you to understand that there's a very important inflection point in intergenerational abuse. You have an identity, right, as the little one. But an identity is just a matter of perspective. It's a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. A giant can hurt you so much, can make you feel so helpless and terrified that you can't tolerate your identity. You can't identify with yourself. Now, this is where a traumatic split occurs. This bit gets buried because narcissistic abusers do not want to hear how cruel they are and how much they're hurting you. They'll hurt you some more for pointing that out, right? Because that's what narcissists do. So you have to bury that. Now, what's left? You need to identify with something. The ego always wants an identity. And so what happens is this little one stops feeling like this helpless person waiting to be hit. And what they do is they identify with the power. What they want to be is the abuser, right? You got to identify with some pattern. When the victim terror trauma pattern is too difficult to feel and endure, a child dissociates. They bury and dissociate from that identity. And what they look to is their abuser. This is sometimes called Stockholm syndrome, but it's very, very common, and it happens often before language. The little one says, I want to be the one there. That person is powerful. They're winning. They're beating me. They're enjoying hitting me. And that is a much more comfortable place. If I could be the one enjoying hitting someone else, if I could be the one where I'm allowed to be schizophrenic, right? Parents are allowed to be schizophrenic. Don't eat dessert before dinner. What were you doing in the afternoon, Mom? You were eating dessert before dinner. Don't you sass me. Da, 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 da. So parents have a might is right protocol, right? They tell one thing to you. They pretend to be that. They lie right in front of your face, eating dessert before dinner, and they hit you for pointing out their insanity, their schizophrenia. So you need to go crazy because you don't want to be hit and pretend that this is the way it is, even though it isn't. And you've got to not eat dessert before dinner when you want to. You've got to figure all that out. But what a world to live in, right? You can't steal money. I just stole some money. You have to follow the law. I just broke the law here, here, and here. You can't eat dessert before dinner. I just ate 5 slices before dinner. I mean, what a world to be in. So the child, given the choice between being helplessly terrified in their own identity or grandiosely pontificating in other people's, like as a dominator, as a dictator, as a parent, as a government, right? The government, you've got to pay your bills on time. The government doesn't, right? Don't borrow money, you're going to get a high interest rate. We just print money, right? So when you have this schizophrenic thing, the obvious migration is, I don't want to be me. This is horrible. What I want to be is the dictator, the parent. And so there becomes a dissociation from one's own helplessness and an association, an identification with the bully, with the dictator, with the villain, right? Falling in love with the conqueror, right? And this happens in romantic relationships plenty of times. Like, why do many women get more attracted to someone that gives them a, quote, neg? You're 50-50, you're an 8, whatever. I don't need you. Need me. Because I want someone who's better than me, not someone who's in a relationship as a human being with me. It's power dynamics, right? So this is what's going on in this territory. And it's confusing, right? And it's how helpless children who never want to feel that way again, because it's so very, very, very painful, become bullying adults who block their helplessness in the past with new initiations of dominance in the present. Every time they start to feel helpless, they bully someone, right? The parent's waiting there, the boss is going to criticize me, maybe I'm going to get fired. Their kid says, give me some milk, Mom. And he goes, now I feel powerful again. I'm no longer that frightened child waiting to be hit. Now I become the bully, right? So that's how intergenerational abuse happens. That's how the victim becomes the bully. And, that's something that we're going to have to work out because, again, like so many other things, nobody gives us a manual. Well, you don't want to be feeling like that helpless child any more than anyone else does, right? And so that's why this is hard. It's so terrifying to go into those small, still spaces. It's terrifying. And nobody's helping you, right? Nobody's helping you. Nobody's saying, here's how to go into that terrified place, and here's what to do, or here's the territory. It just feels terrible to go in there. Absolutely terrible. And I feel sorry. I'm sad that this is what you need to deal with, right? That success means dealing with this, but it does, right? Because the psyche is smart. I think that is the single biggest cause of your suffering, of our suffering. It's been waiting there for decades for some competent grown-up or adult to do something about it. Nobody's shown up, right? We've dated over 100 women. None of them showed up and said, here's how you love this, and here's how you deal with this. They're all dealing with their own stuff with so much panic and anxiety. They're not interested in yours. And of course, you've wanted a competent mother, a competent grown-up, someone to know who knows what they're doing, right? But mostly they don't. And those that do often do not have the articulating talent to put it into words. You've met a few people that are relatively good at dealing with these things, but they don't know how to put it into words, which is your language. Right? So they may, I think, probably get some of this, but they don't say, I get this, here's what you're dealing with, this is what's not going to work, let's do it this way. They just, I can't do this for you. Who wants to hear that? Yeah, they can't do it for me. I've heard that my entire life. They can't do it for me. Somebody, right? I can't do it. Where am I supposed to learn to do this? So this is, I would say, the biggest crisis, both as a species, as a family, as a country, and for us. This is the crisis, right? The better the outer world, the more this problem comes into focus. So it's no wonder that some part of us sabotages the outer world frequently, because that can be solved. That's easy, right? You lose a bunch of money. Oh, that's never bothered us. Lose a bunch of money, no problem. Now we can go back to work and make more money. But have stillness and face this, that is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And I wish I could give you better resources, but what I can tell you is meditate. So meditate and have a practice of meditation. Have a practice of meditation. Exercise in nature, not work, right? Because when you go into work, this could go wrong and this could go wrong. Exercise for pleasure. Exercise in nature for pleasure. Massage. Present, still, calming massage. You're going to have to teach people. 90% of masseuses do not do this automatically, right? So you either have to find maybe 5% of masseuses go here naturally. You're going to have to coach the masseuses to know how to get you in touch with these feelings and not dissociate from them, right? So, Thailand is frankly the best place in the world for that. You'll find some people that do it naturally. Others you can go back to. Massage is great. It's worth trying to find that around here. In the US, it's much harder, 10 times more expensive. And there's often a sociopathic, like, we're a professional, we're not here to deal with your feelings, we're just massaging you, right? Well, that's part of the disconnect. It's difficult territory. So spend time in Thailand. I would say that inner dialogue. Find the terrified kid inside and comfort him through writing. You can't do both, and I haven't found a great therapist so far who doesn't interrupt and break the spell and get off in their head, and who's willing to go into these feelings and get it. That's unfortunate, but you have to understand that many therapists and psychologists come from fucked up backgrounds. That's why they decided to be weird and study psychology, hoping that they would learn about it. And many of them are just kind of living through their clients and lack the courage their clients. It doesn't take a lot of courage. Got maintenance people. It doesn't take a lot of courage to listen to your clients be terrified and say, come back next week and give me a check. It takes courage to speak up, right? Well, many therapists do not see therapists. They just listen to the client's issues. Now, this is not across the board. It's just to understand therapists often have at least as many problems as other people do. And often they studied psychology because they didn't know how to deal with them. And psychology today is not a very competent model. So they haven't necessarily figured it out how to do anything other than make money listening to people's problems. Well, that's not a very competent answer to you, right? When they're frightened to go into the feelings that they want you to go into, that's not going to feel good or safe to you. So well done for somewhat abandoning therapists in that territory. There's certainly been about, at least 10% of therapy has been really useful. But a lot of it has been frustrating because you know it's not going anywhere and you're paying for it. You're taking time off work to pay for it and feel worse, and you realize they don't know what they're doing, right? Well, that's not any fun, right? So I would understand that if you want to make exceptional progress in this territory, you're going to have to do what you've always done, which is go against conventional wisdom and find things that work. And these do work. Inner dialogue works. So you can write a letter and connect with the terror, and then you can respond as you imagine a healthy grown-up, a healthy adult might respond. One that you maybe have never met, but could imagine, okay, if there was a healthy adult that had enough empathy to respond to this terror, what might they say? What might they do? That's working, right, by the way. So I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to know that the deepest wounds are pre-verbal in the body, and that I don't yet know how to deal with them in any efficient way. Meaning, I can deal with a wave. I wake up feeling terrified. I can do some inner dialogue, and in 10 minutes, I feel comforted and healed. Well, that's 10 times more efficient than a therapist, but that's that wave, right? There's this idea like if we could just get to the core. I don't know if there is a core, and one of the reasons why that is let's say that we effectively deal with this layer here. So we get all this trauma noise out. There's a younger age, right? It goes all the way back to the birth trauma, coming out, born on a kitchen table, two people and their anxiety and all those chemicals going through the body, etc. So as you deal, like we've gotten to maybe age 6, age 5, and we know how to deal with that to some extent. But let's say that we really, really do a good job of calming that part. Well, there's a younger part, right? And the way it works in sensitivity, this is also very important to understand because hedonic adaptation helps you understand why the first time you taste organic, fresh squeezed orange juice, it's a 10. Wow, oh, it's so much better than store-bought. Oh, this is great. It's a 10, right? You times by 100, and it becomes a 3. You have 100 glasses of organic orange juice day after day, and you stop noticing, right? So you lose at least 70% of the value through hedonic adaptation by repetition. Now there's another form of hedonic adaptation that's sensitivity. And how that works is let's say this sound is playing in the environment, this loud top sound is playing in the environment. So you don't notice any of the other sounds. So you get rid of this sound. Your ear readjusts and becomes more sensitive. Now you hear this sound, so you get rid of that sound. It's quiet, it feels peaceful for a while. Your ear readjusts, just like your eyes do at night. And then you see or hear the next pattern. So you get rid of that. And then you become more sensitive, more attuned, and you hear this pattern. And you get rid of that, and then there's another one. Now, wouldn't it be nice if finally there was just no more pain? That's it. Wouldn't that be nice? That's not actually how it works. If you are about to be evicted, you will not be worried about the idiot who steals your stapler at work. If your whole life is absolutely perfect, absolutely nothing wrong. The mind tends to gravitate. The default of the brain is negative. It's just a survival algorithm. Prioritize the negative. Imagine a pastoral village, wonderful picnic, beautiful day, standing in the water, wading. Well, it's just perfect. The wind, delicious ginger beer, a sandwich. Oh, it's so wonderful. You see one little wriggling shape this long in the pool. Your brain instantly, what's that? Is that a snake? Am I going to... It's 1% of your reality. 1%. But it is the only possible threat. And your brain is captivated by fear. Now, you've got to work to undo that. You don't enjoy the sandwich when you're wondering if that's a snake. You don't enjoy the ginger beer. The flowers become meaningless. Your partner, maybe you were just, it all vanishes. Is that a snake? What about it? Right? So this is the brain. Right? That's why if you understand that 1% of negativity is enough to captivate the brain, that snake is not even 1,000th of the vista, but it is 100% of your attention, right? Now, the body doesn't have that much ability to tell the difference between a stapler being missing, because you tell the body that's not good. People should not take the stapler. That's bad. That's wrong. Snakes are bad. Snakes are wrong. The body just listens to what you tell it, right? You go in, someone's stolen my stapler. I'm not safe, right? So if you're being evicted, the stapler doesn't matter. Oh, I can deal with that another day, right? The trouble is, when there's nothing wrong, every little thing becomes irritating. Oh, right, I could have been happier at home. What am I doing in this lousy hotel? Oh, this is it, right? So this is something, it's a riddle. And it doesn't go away. Meaning I've created states of, quote, perfection, where just leaving the house was a huge downfall. It was just so comfortable in the house, right? Stepping outside the door, it's hot, these trucks going by, just stay in the house, right? So luxury can be a prison, and it also doesn't deal with the core issues, right? And so you've got to have paths, mental paths through all this stuff, right? And again, silence from the cult, what to do with this territory. Now, you may meet people later, if you talk about this, other people, of course, have had parts of these experiences, right? Oh, I had that too, right? But that's after you figured it out and have put it out there, right? They don't tell you before you've talked about it. I'm having this weird experience here and nobody's talking to me about it. You ask them how they're doing, they say they're fine. They ask how you're doing, you don't know what else to say. You say, okay, good and bad. Well, I'm too busy to hear about it, so off they go. So this is not your fault. It's something that I'm dealing with. It's something that you're going to have to deal with. And I hope that by knowing that these are some of the big things to deal with, that you can have a little bit more clarity about where to put your attention, where to put your mind. And spend less energy being surprised, like, nobody's talking about this and this? You can do that for a year. Or you can just say, yeah, that is the way it is, and nobody is talking about it, and that is crazy. And what are we going to do about it, right? How are we going to respond? So anyway, it's been a pleasure, Dane, to talk with you and think about these things. As I talk to you, I get insights that may be useful for me, and that may in turn may be helpful to you as you come to my point in life and have to make your own decisions about what to do next and why. And just one final thought. I started the thing by saying focus more on presence. And then I explained for a long time why we get lost in anxiety and addiction, the addiction of anxiety. So I want to just complete that thread and say that humor, meditation, a little bit of perspective, death is not such a bad thing. So many of the little things do not actually have anything to do with life and death, but feel like they do because of the body. And ultimately, if you have a perfect world that you've gained compulsively and anxiously and haven't spent time to enjoy the moment, that's the biggest failure of all, right? That's been my biggest failure, is getting lost, like even in what I just said, in the video of why this doesn't work and that doesn't work. Like there's a part of my mind that thinks that I have to solve all this, right? How are we going to stop humanity going off a cliff, right? What are we going to do about it? Right? This sounds terrible. That compulsive energy means that I don't get to enjoy looking at your face. Means that I don't enjoy looking at my partner. I'm busy going round and round. I'm not enjoying the beauty in my house. So I would say that if there's some technique to go for presence over, like I think it's been generally good that you've stayed small, right? Because you are very easily reactively triggered about all kinds of things. And as of yet, I haven't figured out how to become less so than we are, right? Obviously, I figured out how to be as less triggered as I am, but not more than that. I think going a little slower, trying to achieve less manically, enjoying interactions more, and laughing a little bit, because the brain will get all worked up about every little thing. Right? We have this wonderful relaxed moment. We go to the job site. The crew didn't do what I said. Oh, instantly this, I told them this. What if they keep not doing what I say? What if this happens and that happens? Oh my goodness, right? Well, most of the time, crew doesn't do what you say, you redo it. It's not worth the day of stress and dynamic, right? And so, understand why that manicness is there, and understand that the single biggest mistake or area to easily improve would be to become 10 times more focused on presence, and by extension, 9 times less focused on anxious fear. Because once you can critically evaluate it, and it is one of the reasons why I encourage you to get a certain amount of money, because then you can critically analyze and say, look, there really isn't, because when, for example, a lot of our stress right now is coming from the crew not following instructions. Well, if you have a certain amount of money, you can at least rationally say, I got upset over relatively nothing, so let's let it go. If you don't, if you're on the edge of bankruptcy, right, then, and the crew's doing dumb stuff that might tip you over the edge, then you'll get just as upset, but you'll have no rational safety net to say this is silly, right? Because you know that going through bankruptcy, losing this and that isn't very fun, right? So that's kind of how I would complete that thought. Right? These are all the reasons why you are terrified and anxious. They're not your fault. You're doing well. Meaning, of all the people I know in my life, you have spent more time, more thought, more money, trying more things to respond to this than anyone I know, right? So that's not where the fault is. But it is nonetheless important to understand that a life worth living, right? And many times our life does not feel worth living. A life worth living is coming back into presence, being present in our body, enjoying the moments in our body. So that's what I wish for you to have more of.